to the football last night with Gary Breen, our reporter, Enda Call. Caught up with some Ireland fans before the game yesterday to get their thoughts on the Executive Vice President of the FAI, John Delaney.
Did you hear the news about John Delaney during the week, or what do you think about it?
I can't believe that they found another job for him. I just think it's disgraceful. I just can't believe it. I tell you, he should be out the door.
He should resign then, should he?
Oh, he should be out the door.
John Delaney is a gentleman. It's only old talk, old politician rubbish. When we were doing great with John Delaney, he was a great man. Now he's a bollocks. It's all shite. Come out and support the country, and that's what I say.
You don't think he should resign then?
No, he shouldn't resign. Why should he resign?
The whole board should go, yeah. Yeah, it needs a clean out. Need a new start, a renaissance. New beginning needs to happen.
You didn't think of protesting and not coming to this game tonight, did you?
No, that'd be absolutely horrendous. What's the point of the fans coming out there throwing tennis balls on the pitch? How's that going to help the team?
No, I didn't bring a few tennis balls, but I still think he should resign, and so should some of the board, yeah.
No tennis balls from us. It's of no benefit to the players.
And do you think Irish football is in a good place or bad place at the minute?
I think Irish football is always in a good place.
Well, it's a bit of optimism. That was pre-match before we'd actually managed to beat Georgia by a goal. Gary Breen, good morning to you. How you doing?
I'm very well. Good morning, guys.
How did we play last night? What was your assessment of the quality of football you saw?
We played like an Ireland team. We played like a Mick McCarthy team on the front foot. The crowd responded to it. I really enjoyed it. I felt comfortable. I know the scoreline was tight at stages, but it was everything I expected to see, to be perfectly honest. I know everyone talked about how poor we were in Gibraltar, but I never felt that the transition would be that big a job from that to producing what we saw last night, because I know Mick, I know the players are capable of so much more than we've seen over the last couple of seasons. And you can see the mood in the camp has changed. You can see the energy with which the team play, and the supporters loved it. I thought it was a great night's work. What
about somebody like Glenn Whelan? And you kind of look at his ability on the ball last night, his willingness to pass the ball forward, you know, just the drive and energy that he showed. It does make you a little bit... it makes you lament a little bit for how he has been shoehorned into the team and pigeonholed as somebody who is incapable of doing what we saw him do last night.
Well, the reason you saw him play as well as he did last night is because he's been given a disciplined role to execute. Now, Mick puts a lot of stock on that holding midfielder. He has done it club level. I've experienced it. And as a centre-half, he wants that midfielder who can protect the centre-halves when the full-back's going advanced areas. And you saw Stevens, Coleman bombing on. I mean, Coleman looked like his old self last night. So I've no surprise about that. But what you also get, because the midfielder in advanced areas, because the forwards are in advanced areas, he's got simple passes that he did not ever have, it seemed, towards the end of O'Neill's tenure, because we were encamped on the edge of our 18-yard box, 9 players, you get the ball, there's no forward passes to be made. So I'm not surprised he played well. He's an experienced player, and I'm sure he's delighted with what he did last night. When you saw the team last night, there was no Matt Doherty, and what was your initial assessment? Because you'd been on saying that you didn't think that we should can the experiment of playing Matt Doherty on the right side of midfield just yet, that actually it needed another opportunity. And I totally agreed with you. I felt that like last night would have been another opportunity for us to see what that team looked like, but Mick obviously felt differently. Yeah, listen, as you said, at the risk of repeating myself, I think it can work, but probably the fact that there was only a couple of days training, not even that, to iron out the reasons why it didn't work in Gibraltar is probably why he didn't play. It was too important, this game as such. But he'll have a big part to play. I know people are saying that, we have to get him in the team. But let's not forget, we've had better fullbacks than Seamus Coleman and Doherty, who are battling at right back, like Gary Kelly, Finnan and Carr. You can't play them all. So I do believe he has a role to play, but I don't think we should just shoehorn him in because they're our 2 best Premier League players. Nevertheless, looking at the performances of Brady, I think he's got a long way to go to get back to what we want to see. I think he obviously showed a lot of energy, but within about 60 minutes he's tired, and that's understandable, bearing in mind he's played so little football. But it was at that period, and you could hear Mick barking on orders to Robbie to pick up his man. He wasn't able to do that. It was that period for a couple of minutes that the Georgians then started to play a little bit. So it just highlights how important that every one of those players is on the top of their game, because if we're not as effective. Yeah, we don't have a whole heap of strength and depth. Is James McCarthy perhaps the successor to Glenn Whelan in that role? I mean, obviously, he's already played whatever it is, 60, 70 times for Ireland. So, but is that that role, and it's very well defined, and whenever Glenn Whelan isn't going to be around, that it will ultimately be James McCarthy's job? I do think there's a big difference. I think James has got a lot more athleticism about him in terms of going forward than Glenn Whelan. Listen, Glenn Whelan is a master of his trade. He knows exactly how to influence a game. There's times when plays heading is in and around ahead of him, he literally turns his back and runs back into that forward position and says, I'm not involved in that. I'll collect you when you come nearer to our goal. So that type of discipline, I'm not sure McCarthy has it in his game, but certainly he's a talented player who you would expect to get into our midfield at one stage when he gets fit.
You've mentioned the word discipline quite a bit there, Gary. Like, how hands-on is Mick McCarthy in terms of giving one-to-one instruction in that way?
Oh, massive. More than anything, Ian, in terms of giving you confidence, belief, saying to you that personality comes out. Now, I said it on Saturday that we saw Hourihane start taking the free kicks, and he's not that comfortable, it seemed, in the Irish squad, but that changed all last night. The very fact that Brady started, but Connor still had the set pieces, was a great plus. And that would have come from Mick McCarthy saying, listen, you've got the quality. I've admired you for a long time. You need to start showing it. Now, in his 11th cap, he looked every bit a central midfielder for Ireland. At times before, he'd been playing in different positions, no real system, no real tactics under O'Neill, so he struggled. But, oh my God, we saw the difference last night. And it wasn't just him. I saw a notable difference in so many players. I question whether or not McLean would struggle a bit because we're up the pitch. He'd have to work in tight areas. He was exceptional, wasn't he, in that second half, driving through tight areas, beating 1, 2, 3 players. And that was impressive. McGoldrick was just brilliant in terms of the link at centre forward, running in behind, coming short. There were trigger points that when he did come short, we had runners in behind. We just looked like we had numbers, energy, verve. The crowd was with us. I just thoroughly enjoyed it.
The point about Hourihane as well, I wonder, is the comfort that he feels from having that relationship at club level with Glenn Whelan. The other kind of thinking about bringing Whelan back in, obviously he needs somebody in that role. We have a ready-made person, you're going to stick him in there, but there's the added benefit then of having that knock on, because it was interesting. Robbie Brady took the first free kick that was in that area, and you're like, oh, I wonder is this what's going to happen.
He took no corners though, did he, Jay? He took no corners, but he ran over for that free kick.
He did.
As soon as he hit it low into the wall, I thought, you won't be on the next one.
No, and in fairness, I wonder what that conversation is, because it was certainly Whelan and Hourihane were straight over to the ball, and there was no doubts. I mean, obviously there was 3.5 minutes for everybody to get their head around what was going to happen, but like Hourihane's just standing there going, yeah, I'm going to take this, and we have our plan in place, and it was clearly the right thing to do.
Yeah, and you could see the work they'd done. And even the reaction of Alan Kelly would have been playing a part on it to tell you how difficult it is when Duffy stands on the edge of the wall where you put your position up as a goalkeeper. So he was clearly unsighted. He looked like he was slow to get across the goalkeeper. But take nothing away from the strike. It was brilliant. And even if Duffy weren't there, I think it probably would have tested the keeper anyway, such was the curl and pace of the strike. But I like the fact that he had that personality. I want him to play with that, stick his chest out, to literally say, listen, I'm the main man now in here, and why not? He's playing so well for Villa. He's at an age now where he should be doing that. And I think that would have come regardless of whether or not Whelan's there. I think at times you might look at a club mate and he's alongside you and feel a little bit more comfortable, but I don't believe that. I just think that he now knows he's got a manager more than anything that believes in him.
It seems that the team, just thinking about it there, Gary, is almost picking itself going into, say, the Denmark game, assuming there are no major injuries. Like, I mean, it seems that David McGoldrick, after last night's performance, is ahead in the pecking order of Shane Long almost. I know that could be like a fairly big statement. That maybe the only person on last night's performances that might be up for being dropped, for lack of a better term, is Robbie Brady. But even then, when you look at Matt Doherty last Saturday in Gibraltar, it's not an essential swap.
No, but I listen, in terms of how well they've played, that's all you can do as a player, is put a real marker down to protect your position in the team. But having said that, having known Mick McCarthy, if there's a different setup to be done to execute against the Danes and to be successful, then he'll drop anyone. There's no problem about that. It's not a case of you played well, so you're automatically going to start the next game. They'll sit back, they'll review how the Danes play, how they can be vulnerable, and then he'll look at each squad and see who can do that most. So I don't see it ever as it being like, you played well one game, you'll play the next.
Yeah, that was definitely something that you guys had to get used to, wasn't it? Although, like, you got into Mick McCarthy's team and kind of held your position for a long period of time, and yet there was really intense competition at centre-back. So did you ever get a nod to give you that confidence, or was that just like, it wasn't confidence you were getting picked, it was confidence in your ability, or was it confidence you were getting picked? How did that work?
Well, I think it's a bit of both, isn't it? You've got to have confidence in your ability when you're playing at that level, because no one's going to hold your hand when a whistle goes as such. But then you get it from your manager, you get it from your teammates as well. But listen, that squad, and people keep referencing Mick's initial stint as manager, towards the end, or not the end of when it went bad, but certainly in the build-up to that World Cup in 2002, that squad's, I don't think we're ever going to see a squad of that quality and that strength of depth, again, to be perfectly honest. But Nevertheless, I would hope, and I know this in terms of a motivation factor, all those lads who didn't start last night will be encouraged. Listen, come on, in training, you need to be putting pressure on these players. You need to try and get in the team. And if you do perform in training, now, listen, I remember going to the World Cup where I was a first choice for about 4 or 5 years going into that. I think I was injured one game, didn't play the first one of the games leading into it before we went over. I think it was Nigeria at home. I wasn't happy about it. And then I proved it in terms of training, got myself back into the team. So that is what Mick will do. He won't allow any of those players who played so well to just drop down a little bit in training and think, I'm saving myself for the game. That won't be accepted, no chance.
Well, I suppose when you've got Matt Doherty on the bench, everybody's looking around going, Jesus, this guy's in the Premier League team of the year and he's not in the team. It has a knock-on impact because generally, like a lot of fans, when they saw the team, were like, why the hell can we not somehow get our best player on form in the team? It seemed really counterintuitive, but I guess if you're a manager, you're looking at a slightly different picture and going, well, what is the message this sends out to everybody?
Yeah, but the difficulty is, again, Joe, is that if you want to get him in a team, so it's as basic as saying there's a right-back position available, Seamus or Doherty. So that's the question Ireland fans have got to ask themselves. And we've had it before, like better players than Doherty and better players than Seamus Coleman didn't play for Ireland before because our right-back options were so strong, the likes of Gary Kenny, I said it again, Stephen Carr, Steve Finnan, they're far better players. That's not being disrespectful to those two guys because I really, really enjoy watching him in the Premier League. I really enjoy watching him in an Ireland shirt. Not so much Doherty as yet, but I believe I will be seeing him. So they have got a part to play, but it's as basic as that for Mick McCarthy. It will literally be as black and white as that. Now, I do believe that Doherty can play on the right side of midfield in front of Seamus Coleman. The only problem is, and we've seen it last night, is that Seamus Coleman wants to bomb on, and if he does it as well as he did last night, then he's effectively going to block all the areas that Doherty wants to work in. So it is a problem, no doubt. But there were lots of other positives. I don't want to just talk about that dynamic again, those two. The defence, brilliant, squeezing the pitch up. I don't think Duffy particularly likes doing it, but you can hear Keogh barking the orders out. And in squeezing that defence up, it allows our midfield to engage. And the result is what you saw, is that our midfield were right on top of those Georgians. Now, these Georgians are not top-class international players. So if you deny them the opportunity to get their head up, make passes, develop a rhythm, then they're not going to be able to cope. That's not being disrespectful. But the flip side of that, the last time they come into Dublin, is that we did actually make them look like top-class players because we allowed them to sit off us and play. When we then asked the questions, can you do it when there's tight, no space around you, top-class players can these Georgians? No, they couldn't. And that chance that Hourahan had where we smothered them, Hendricks puts a crunching tackle in, Hourahan goes in 1v1. I back his quality to beat the keeper. He should have scored, but if you don't score, you've got to square it to Brady. But even that, look at the numbers, the tempo, the energy we have. That felt like an Ireland team, and the fans really responded.
Yeah, like there were some questions about the Ireland centre-halves on Saturday in terms of how high they were playing. It wasn't their fault, it was how Ireland tactically set up and where our midfield was perhaps pushing up a little bit too close to the attack. Last night, positionally, was it perfect from your point of view? Maybe not the execution of it, but as a centre-half, would you be happy playing where Shane Duffy or Richard Keogh were predominantly positioned last night?
Well, you have to. If you play for Mick McCarthy centre half, you have to squeeze the pitch. It's not for discussion. It's not about sitting on your 18-yard box, which Duffy, Keogh, all the centre halves have done well under Martin O'Neill. And I'd argue, listen, international football is difficult, but the easiest part is sitting on your 18-yard box with 9 of your teammates around you. And that's what we did. So it's difficult to find space. That won't be acceptable. Got to get up the pitch. They'll do that. I think Duffy can do it. He's doing it in the Premier League, for God's sake. But I just think with Ireland at times there's a reluctance. But Keogh's barking the orders out. He's been given that instruction by the manager, by the coaching staff. And he's the type of vocal centre-half who'll demand it. You can see him pushing us up all the time. Duffy takes a bit of time. Even on Saturday, you could see Coleman demanding that those centre-halves got higher up the pitch. In doing so, there's a knock-on effect. Our midfielder are up in advanced areas. We've got support of our forwards. You saw the result. Looks like an Ireland team again.
Yeah, like I just kind of like digging a little bit deeper into that analysis, like the talk always around centre-backs is what's the best partnership. I wonder from an Irish perspective, are we now talking about, for lack of a better term, the best triangle in that position, like Keogh, Duffy and whoever is sitting right in front of them? So we're talking about a Keogh, Duffy, Whelan partnership. Is that something that Mick McCarthy looks at when picking his team?
Yeah, I think so, because I think offensively his priority will be getting numbers forward, and he'll know that Coleman and the Stevens can do that from those fullback positions. But to do that, you need a base, you need some security back there. That holding midfield position, as we said earlier, is so important. It might be someone else who comes in, but to this moment in time, Glenn Whelan knows how to execute. Now, listen, at times, Glenn Whelan struggles for athleticism. We've seen that all over the time. So he doesn't want to get exposed against better teams. It might be harder. But definitely, they've put a marker down those two centre-halves. The only problem that I would say, the only negative is, again, set pieces. We've conceded 2 opportunities now. Keogh let his man get off him last night. I think Doherty let his man get off for that brilliant Randolph save against Gibraltar. But I would counter that by saying that's just you being out-jumped by your opponent. That's not being out-manoeuvred, out-tactically, not knowing what you're supposed to be doing like we saw at set pieces for Martin O'Neill. There's a total difference. That unit, that team knows exactly what you're supposed to be doing at set pieces. But Mick McCarthy, we're now saying to those players, you don't get out-jumped at corners, it's not acceptable.
Yeah, the other thing is that they obviously know what they're doing at set pieces going forward as well. Glenn Whelan was talking about afterwards how there was a very specific role for various people. He said Shane Duffy has the biggest...
Who knew, Joe? Hey, who knew going into international football that everyone should know their role? Huh? What a genius Mick is.
Glenn Whelan said it helps having the biggest head in world sport in Shane Duffy to block in the wall, and it's like, well, that's a good idea. I wish somebody thought of that before.
Oh yeah, well, listen, it was, I mean, even when it was being set up, you could see, I mean, he's a mountain, isn't he, Shane, in terms of leaning into a wall, but that's naive by the Georgians. First of all, should be making a referee aware of it. Don't get bullied, push him out, make it confrontational, make the referee come over and have a word with you, but they were naive, they didn't see it. And it just looked like it was a nap that it was going to make the goalkeeper make a save.
The other thing that happened last night, which a lot of people probably were only kind of waking up to afterwards, because you see the score coming through from the Switzerland-Denmark game, and it's 1-0, 2-0, 3-0. The Swiss take off Granit Xhaka with 79 minutes gone, and suddenly everything falls apart, and it's 3-all. Like, it's a remarkable result for Denmark, and I'm kind of thinking, I don't know what this means for us.
I don't know how to take it either. I'm not sure if I'd rather the Swiss beat the Danes and we'll go up against the Danes, because Switzerland's just so consistent, have been for a while at their qualifying campaigns. I think they qualified for 7 of the last 8 major tournaments. Then they beat the golden generations of Belgium 5-2 at the turn of the year. So, listen, and then they go to Georgia, which is ultimately the fixture that everyone thinks is the potential slip-up. It obviously catered for Scotland in a previous campaign. They couldn't get the result there. And they effortlessly went about their business there and getting it done. So to concede 3 goals with 5 minutes to go is an incredible lack of concentration, lack of professionalism.
Yeah, and it keeps Denmark alive, and it means that they'll be on a bit of a high. We play them next. Yeah. I know it's months away, and you can't really carry momentum from these little windows into the next one. It's just like, this was good, the next one has to be good, and we have to kind of treat them as back-to-back fixtures. So, like, obviously we're top of the table. You want to be at top of the table as long as you possibly can, preferably at the very end of the entire thing. So you got to take it when it comes.
Oh, listen, absolutely. I think in terms of Mick coming in, the first 2 games were identified, just get 6 points on the board. Everyone was talking about the performance of Gibraltar. I didn't really... We need to play better, there's no doubt. And Mick McCarthy, as much as he would have said, listen, let's get in, let's get out with the 3 points, he wouldn't have brushed over how people performed. He would have still reviewed it and said, that ain't good enough. I don't care about the conditions. Privately, he would have said to them players, that's not good enough. You're international players, you need to perform better than that. But 6 points, and an opportunity now to step away, to regroup. And I have no doubt in my mind, all those players now, even the ones who didn't start, in terms of the camaraderie that's been created, the atmosphere, will be absolutely desperate to get back on that plane and get back over and meet up for the next international in a way that we were led to believe wasn't the case under the previous regime. That's great. Even the protests last night, and I was watching the game, and suddenly the tennis balls come on and you're thinking, lads. But as soon as they cleared it, did you hear the roar of that crowd before the game started? Now, even I started getting goosepimples thinking, I remember that so much at Lansdowne, where there was periods where were a little bit difficult, then the roar would come up, and you literally turn around to your teammates and say, come on, lads, let's go, we're ready. And it was brilliant to see. I was so proud of the fans last night.
I don't know if you saw Seamus Coleman, actually, when the tennis balls were cleared off, he went to the crowd, come on, like that, and that was kind of, so they were responding to the players, and the players were responding to what had happened, and then Horan sticks it in, and I said earlier on, it was like 2 of the most exciting minutes in Irish football that we had in a very long time, basically since Robbie Brady's goal against Italy. Just on the protests, so there was split opinion. It was like they shouldn't be involving themselves in the game, and then ultimately there's no point in making a protest unless you involve yourself in a way that are going to get people talking about it.
Exactly. You've got to be given a platform, and that is what it is there. So people could say, oh, it's stupid and stuff like that. And yeah, to a certain extent, it is. but they're not going to have their voice heard. So it's not a case of like, if they started doing it out in the street, it would be brushed aside. Now they've given themselves like a topic of conversation. They've made their feelings known, which supporters should do. But I'm not condoning doing something like that. But what was great is that they did it. It was done, and then bang, straight away, right, we're back behind the lads. And even if you spoke to a lot of the Ireland supporters going into it, prior to that, and the talk of it being far more a bigger moment of demonstration as such, you heard the Ireland fans say, no, it's about the lads, it's about the lads. And I've never doubted that in terms of how much the supporters helped that team, because I've experienced it. And that was a major disappointment for me, was that disconnect between the supporters and the team towards the end.
Good stuff, Gary.
And that was one of the priorities that he had to get, and he got it, Mick.
Good stuff, Gary. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Cheers, lads. Bye.